Handed from three. Hull comes soaring in again. This uncanny knack. And cashes in.
Is on the upper left wing. Just got inside, circles around.
Game 3 wasn't basketball. It was daylight robbery. The Indiana Fever were leading and fighting, but a series of whistles ripped the game right from their hands. Suddenly, the Las Vegas Aces were at the foul line. Aliyah Wilson was throwing elbows, and Aliyah Boston couldn't even get a fair challenge recognized. Fans at Gainbridge saw it, social media saw it, and the box score proves it. The Aces didn't outplay the Fever. They were handed that win, and the most infuriating part is that it overshadowed Lexie Hull's gritty, career-defining performance. Do you think the Fever can bounce back? If yes, then comment, "Let's go Fever."
Aliyah Wilson sets a screen where she extends her leg out, but of course they call the foul on Lexie Hull for Aliyah Wilson's illegal screen. Then Aliyah Wilson and Alyssa Smith totally foul Michaela Timpson, but there is no call. Could have took a 1-point lead going into half. Now we're up by 3 and they call a foul that isn't a foul. So we don't get calls when we're getting hit, but the Aces get a call when nobody does anything.
Game 3 was ugly, but this wasn't the first time Indiana had to fight two teams at once. From the start of the series, the officiating leaned toward Las Vegas like a crutch, throwing the balance of competition completely off. Everyone saw it in Game 1 when the Aces tried to climb back at the free throw line, while Indiana's physical play was judged by a different standard. The Fever stood tall defensively, bodied up, and yet those possessions somehow ended with the Aces shooting free throws. That set the tone, and by the second game the pattern had only grown louder, with the calls feeling more and more one-sided.
So why don't you think you were able to find any flow, and when that was the case, what are you trying to do to jumpstart things, maybe on the defense?
Well, it's hard for us to find flow when there's a foul call every 10 seconds. I mean, it just really is. And when they're at the free throw line, we can't get up and down the floor. And that's a challenge. They were much more aggressive and physical defensively. We didn't counter that with our off-ball actions or with our back cuts. So they took us out of our comfort zone. I mean, offense is about rhythm. It's about timing. It's about spacing. We allowed them to do that.
In Game 2, the whistles piled up every quarter, and what began as small frustrations snowballed into a steady drag on Indiana's rhythm, with Stephanie White calling it out post-game. By Game 3, it wasn't just a pattern anymore. It was a wall the Fever couldn't climb. The nightmare sequence came in the third quarter when Aliyah Boston tried to challenge a foul call on Jackie Young, and while White motioned for a review with the bench ready, officials wouldn't even acknowledge it. Seconds later, Chelsea Gray buried a 3, and just like that, the crowd went from roaring with energy to gasping in disbelief as Indiana's lead vanished.
Aliyah Wilson is 1 for 12 as a foul is called on Boston, and that will be number 2 on Aliyah Boston.
You saw Indiana picking up full court pressure defensively, and if you're Aliyah Boston, that's the one spot on the floor you do not want to get a foul call.
And Stephanie White is trying to challenge it and did not call the timeout in time. Gray in the corner.
It wasn't just the scoreboard swing, it was the message. The Fever had played hard enough to earn separation, and in a blink that work was erased by whistles and another Vegas bucket. Fans inside Gainbridge exploded, waving their arms and screaming at refs who seemed to shrug it off. Clips of the exchange went viral almost instantly, with breakdowns showing how the ignored challenge shifted the game on a single possession. Those same videos also highlighted a string of flops, cheap pushes, and constant elbows by the Aces that barely drew a glance from the officials.
2-minute recap from last night. So Aliyah Wilson pushes Howard in the back. Howard pushes her in the back. It's a foul on Howard. Look at this. Aliyah Boston gets totally fouled by Alyssa Smith. Like, it's obvious, but no call. And then Aliyah Wilson gets the call for not half as much. And then Alyssa Smith gets the call for not even getting touched. Here's a replay just to prove it to you.
That's the part that makes it feel less like oversight and more like an open favor. Aliyah Wilson could throw her shoulder into Aliyah Boston. Defenders were tossed to the floor without calls, and flailing arms suddenly counted as defense as long as you wore a Vegas jersey. Meanwhile, Every bit of contact from Indiana was treated like a crime scene. The result wasn't momentum created by talent. It was momentum handed over by referees holding whistles like weapons.
Offensive foul, practically a football check, and the Aces score. So now the Aces cut it to 2, and then A'ja Wilson sets an illegal screen, and they tied things up. And then Lexie Hull gets called for a foul for doing nothing when they just had 2 illegal screens they didn't call. All right, so this is fair. Same thing happens on the other side, but they don't call a foul for Kelsey Mitchell. So Aliyah Boston gets called for this foul for getting her arm grabbed, but Stephanie White can't challenge. They won't let her. That's the second time this game they didn't let her have her challenge. And then A'ja Wilson starts acting like a big baby.
And while that might have crushed the morale of a lesser group, one Fever player refused to let the game be defined by bad calls, because Lexie Hull made sure of it. How often do you see a player who probably shouldn't even be on the court nearly change the direction of an entire playoff series? That's what made Hull the real headline of Game 3. She wasn't supposed to be out there at all. After aggravating her back in the opening game of the series, she entered Friday listed as questionable. Practice was limited, her movements looked stiff in warm-ups, and fans weren't expecting much. But instead of logging a few minutes just to give her teammates a breather, Hull turned her night into something Fever fans will remember long after this series ends.
Boston has the mismatch on Lloyd. Help comes. Kick out. Hull will fire. Fans hit from 3. Last 2 positions inside from Indiana. Smith tied up by Hull. And a jump ball between Smith and...
She played through visible pain and still put up a box score that looked like it belonged to a healthy star. 16 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 blocks, and a steal, while shooting 6 of 10 from the field, including 3 triples that felt like lifelines every time Vegas tried to edge ahead. Those threes mattered even more because they tied her with a franchise playoff record across 2 games, 8 total, which few would have predicted for someone coming off a questionable injury report. She set her playoff career high with 16 in Game 3 against the Aces, and what stood out wasn't just the numbers, but the way she earned them, throwing herself into every loose ball and every scramble for a rebound that most injured players would avoid.
On the left side of the floor, just to clear out, letting Jackie Young go to work.
Jackie Young with 17 points. Boston to the corner. Hull, catch, fire, and hit. Rec call. Evans dishes. Bray whips a pass inside. What a denial from Lexie Hull.
The Hull able to save the play.
12-point game, a little under 2.5 to go. Hull hits Indiana's first field goal.
There were moments when the camera caught her face twisted in discomfort, yet she still boxed out frontline players and chased rebounds that should have gone to taller aces, diving onto the hardwood, wrestling for boards, and somehow gathering herself to knock down shots. She gave the Fever bursts of life every time the officiating tried to deflate them, and even when the Aces were being rewarded at the stripe, Hull kept Indiana alive simply by refusing to let possessions die. That's why the crowd connected with her so strongly. Fever fans knew they were watching a player putting her body on the line because her team needed her.
Back to Hull, wide open 3 is good.
The floor that she wants, doesn't it?
It does. Mitchell, connect. Here's Mitchell. Mitchell, one more. You bet.
And that's what made the entire night feel so wrong. On the same night, Lexie Hull delivered her best playoff performance. All anyone could talk about were the whistles that flipped the scoreboard upside down. That kind of effort deserved the spotlight, but instead it was buried under controversy. Maybe that's why Hull feels like the perfect representation of this Fever squad. Beaten down, underestimated, but refusing to give in. And if she was the picture of grit, what does it say about Vegas that their biggest star barely showed up at all? Imagine being the face of the league, an MVP candidate, and going nearly 3 quarters without hitting a basket. That was Aliyah Wilson in Game 3. She opened with a 3-pointer that looked like a preview of dominance, but the shot stopped falling, and by halftime, she was an astonishing 1-4-11, finishing just 6-4-20. 13 points on 20 attempts isn't just subpar by her standards, it's flat out bad for any starter in the WNBA. Instead of bullying the paint or setting the tone like she's known for, she drifted outward, settled for contested fadeaways, and looked visibly frustrated as Aliyah Boston forced her into uncomfortable shots again and again.
Foul called with a 3-point game for, I don't know why they called that foul, but it's the third quarter and they want them to win. So here we go. Ace is up by 3. They call another foul for A'ja Wilson that isn't a foul. All right, so then they call another foul on the Fever that isn't a foul. And then to end the game after it's out of control because the Fever had a 6-point lead, but they kept calling fouls, another foul for A'ja Wilson that's not a foul. Ball don't lie, A'ja missed 11 shots in a row.
Despite Wilson's struggles, Vegas still walked away winners, and that's what really grates on fans. The Aces didn't need Aya to look like herself because everything else kept breaking their way. Whether through whistles or teammates stepping up, Jackie Young carried them with 25 points, drilling momentum-shifting shots whenever the Fever clawed back. Chelsea Gray added a steady 15, hitting both jumpers and tough layups when the offense stalled, while Nalissa Smith, whose play has wavered at times this season, delivered on both ends when the Aces needed it most. So while their supposed superstar was clanking shot after shot, the rest pieced together just enough baskets to ride the officiating back into control. What made it worse was the media coverage. Wilson's box score clearly told the story of struggle, yet plenty of outlets padded the narrative with talk of her all-around impact, rebounds, blocks, a few assists, or shifted the focus to the Aces' depth. What got lost in translation was the real reason for her inefficiency. Aliyah Boston hounded her on every possession, denying space and forcing her into awkward attempts that wrecked her efficiency. When a league MVP shoots 30% on 20 tries, that's not just an off night. It's elite one-on-one defense that deserves recognition.
Here's Hull, working behind Boston. Boston was open. Great dig, and Boston lays it in.
At the same time, Wilson still managed to impact the game physically, just not in ways that earned respect. There were elbows underneath, undercuts on box outs, and long arms tossed carelessly into Indiana players that almost never drew a whistle, yet the Aces kept benefiting. Becky Hammon even complained afterward that Wilson was getting hit too often, pointing to her single free throw attempt in 38 minutes. But the humor in that is obvious. This is the same Vegas team that has lived at the foul line across all 3 games. And when you're sitting on more freebies than your opponent for the entire series, crying about calls rings hollow.
Got hit a lot tonight. To shoot 1 free throw in 38 minutes. I know they told me not to say anything, but I can't.
The truth is Indiana bottled up Aya Wilson. They did the job you're supposed to do against the league's best player, and they still lost because whistles softened the blow. That's what makes the Aces' win feel empty. Rather than their star proving why she's the best, she was rescued by officiating and teammates who bailed her out. That's not a statement victory, it's a protected escape. Now all eyes turn to Gainbridge Fieldhouse, where Indiana has one final shot to flip the poison narrative. Sunday isn't just another playoff game, it's survival for the Fever. Game 4 is their last chance to prove they belong against a franchise that's been gifted every break along the way. Down 2-1, beaten up by injuries, and forced to battle more than just the opponent in front of them, Indiana enters knowing one loss ends their season. And that sharp contrast sets the stage for a night where everything is stacked against them.
Sims, voice short. Look at Hull coming screaming in for the rebound. Boston trying to body Wilson and does. Sims back to Boston, going back to work and dropping it in. An aggressive and effective Aliyah Boston.
Becky Hammon has already started setting the stage, complaining about the Fever's physicality and hinting that officiating might lean toward the home team this time. The irony is clear. After 3 games where calls tilted almost exclusively to Vegas, now the coach of the 2-time champions sounds like she's bracing for whistles to finally even out. It shows how comfortable the Aces have become with favorable conditions and how much pressure they feel walking into Gainbridge knowing the crowd won't sit quietly through another repeat of Game 3. Because Gainbridge will not be quiet. 17,000 Indiana fans are expected to pack the building, turning every possession into misery for Las Vegas. It's not just noise, it's a wall of energy. When the Fever get a stop, when Boston scores inside, when Hull buries a three, that arena transforms into a storm the Aces haven't handled well this season. Even Hammond admitted Vegas hasn't enjoyed playing there. That's Indiana's greatest weapon. Turn the building into fuel and challenge the Aces to survive without officiating help.
Here's Boston, back to Hull. Sets herself up. Mitchell is free, laying it in. Been a while since Mitchell has gotten a shot attempt. Mitchell will get one here. Heads hit.
The Fever's plan is no secret. Push the tempo immediately, get Aliyah Boston touches inside, and force Aliyah Wilson to defend without the bailout of constant trips to the stripe. Establish Kelsey Mitchell early after her rough Game 3, because her scoring runs are the difference between trading baskets and building leads. And Hull's performance can't just be an outlier. Even playing through injury, she became the heartbeat of the team, and carrying that energy again could swing not just the scoreboard but the spirit of the roster. Vegas has cracks even as defending champions. Wilson's confidence looks thin after being locked down. Jackie Young is carrying too much of the load, and depth that looks fine at home hasn't faced a playoff storm like Gainbridge at full volume. If Indiana attacks those weak points, this series can shift dramatically. Game 4 isn't just about survival. It's about sending a message for what's coming next season when Caitlin Clark returns and the Fever's core sharpens into a true contender.
First half, Young attacking and denied. Timpson on the block. Hull needs some help. Dump it in Boston. Find the cutter. Timpson lays it.
The Fever didn't lose Game 3. They had it stolen. Indiana built a lead, played strong defense, and then watched the refs turn the game into free points for Las Vegas. That's not basketball. That's interference. Game 4 is bigger than survival now. It's about exposing how hollow those Aces wins look when whistles don't bail them out. If Hull fights through pain again, if Mitchell heats up, and if Boston keeps punishing Wilson inside, Gainbridge can erupt into chaos. Add 17,000 fans to that mix, and this series shifts. Indiana's season isn't finished, it's just about to get louder. Do you think the Fever can bounce back? If yes, then comment, "Let's go Fever." Like, subscribe, and turn on all notifications so you never miss out. Click the video on the screen, and we'll see you in the next one.